The gym was filled with the sound of punching bags and echoing footsteps. When a new face appeared, a quiet woman who carried herself with calm confidence. She didn't talk much, didn't show off, and that alone caught the trainer's attention. He had seen all kinds of students before, loud beginners, eager fighters, overconfident challengers, but never someone like her. She simply stood at the edge of the mat, waiting for instructions, her eyes calm yet unreadable. The trainer, known for his tough attitude and pride in his skills, smirked. He decided to test her on her first day, thinking it would be fun to show everyone how unprepared she was. "Let's see what you can do," he said with a half smile, giving her a few warm-up drills that were far beyond what any beginner could handle. The others in the gym stopped what they were doing, curious. They expected her to struggle, maybe even quit. But to their surprise, she didn't complain. She followed every instruction carefully, moving with quiet precision. Her punches weren't the strongest, but they were controlled and focused. The trainer raised an eyebrow, slightly amused, but mostly skeptical. He added more pressure, telling her to spar with one of the advanced students. Whispers spread around. This was supposed to humiliate her, not train her. Yet, she stepped forward without hesitation, her expression calm, her breathing steady. When the sparring began, she didn't rush or panic. Instead, she observed. Each move she made was deliberate, thoughtful, and when she countered, it was with a level of awareness no one expected. The trainer's smile slowly faded. There was something in her movements, not raw strength, but understanding, timing, and confidence that came from experience, not arrogance. For a brief moment, he wondered who she really was. The others watched in silence, sensing something unusual unfolding before them. When the session ended, she simply bowed her head slightly and thanked him, as if nothing special had happened. The trainer forced a grin, hiding his surprise, and told everyone to get back to work. But inside, his pride stung. He couldn't explain it, but something about her presence unsettled him. It wasn't fear, it was the realization that he had misjudged her. As she left the gym that evening, the light from the doorway framed her silhouette, calm and unwavering. The trainer stood still, watching her go, his thoughts racing. Who was this woman who didn't boast, didn't react, yet carried the strength to make an entire room go silent? He didn't know it yet, but this quiet encounter was just the beginning of something that would change not only his view of her, but of himself, and everyone who witnessed that silent challenge would remember it for a long time. The next morning, the gym was busier than usual. Word had spread about the new woman who had quietly impressed everyone the day before. Some came early, just to see if the rumors were true, that a beginner had managed to hold her ground against the trainer's toughest drills. The trainer himself arrived with a confident grin, pretending not to care, but deep down, a tiny spark of irritation burned inside him. He told himself it was just luck. Maybe she had one good day. Today, he planned to expose her limits. The session began with intense warm-ups, ones that even advanced students struggled to keep up with. But as the others began to tire, she kept her rhythm steady, her breathing calm, her form perfect. There was no arrogance in her movements, just quiet focus. Every punch landed exactly where it should. Every dodge was clean and natural. The trainer noticed the precision, but instead of praising her, he laughed loudly and said, "Not bad for a beginner." His tone carried mockery, not encouragement. Still, she didn't react. That calm silence made his smile fade a little. He decided to push her further, calling her out for a one-on-one demonstration. The crowd circled around the mat, curious and excited. "Let's see if you can keep up," he said, stepping closer, his voice sharp with pride. The bell rang, and for a moment, the air felt heavier. He made the first move, fast and intimidating, a sweep meant to scare, not harm. She didn't flinch. Her eyes followed his motion, and with effortless timing, She shifted her stance and countered in a way that made him stumble slightly. It wasn't a strong hit, but it was precise enough to make him lose balance for just a second, and that second felt like an eternity to him. A few gasps escaped from the crowd. The trainer quickly recovered, forcing a laugh to hide the embarrassment. "Lucky move?" he said, but his voice cracked ever so slightly. He tried again, faster this time, more aggressive. She still didn't panic. Her body moved like water, smooth, controlled, and patient. Each time he tried to catch her off guard, she responded with quiet precision that left him increasingly frustrated. His ego began to ache. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was the expert. She was supposed to struggle. But instead, she was teaching him without saying a single word. The other students could sense it too. The room's energy had shifted. Every eye was on them, and every breath held a question. Who really had control here? When the bell finally rang to end the round, the trainer forced a grin and told everyone to take a break. She nodded politely and stepped back, wiping the sweat from her forehead. There was no sign of triumph in her eyes, only calm respect. But as the trainer turned away, his heart pounded with unease. For the first time, he wasn't sure who was learning from whom, and that realization hit harder than any punch he'd ever taken. By the next day, whispers had already begun floating through every corner of the gym. It started small, a few curious voices near the treadmills, a quiet conversation between two regulars by the lockers. But soon everyone had heard about the new girl who almost matched the coach. Some believed it completely, saying they saw it with their own eyes, while others laughed it off, convinced it was exaggerated gossip. Still, curiosity filled the air. People began watching her more closely during warm-ups, expecting to find some clue that proved or disproved the rumors. But what they saw only added to the mystery. She never bragged. She never even mentioned what had happened. Instead, she carried herself with quiet respect, helping others stretch, showing new members how to wrap their hands properly, even offering water to a struggling beginner during sparring drills. It wasn't what anyone expected from someone who had challenged the trainer's authority, even accidentally. Her calm, humble behavior made her more likable, but it also made the trainer's unease grow stronger. He tried to ignore it, focusing on his routine, barking instructions louder than usual to remind everyone who was in charge. Yet, every time he glanced toward her, he caught her moving with effortless grace, perfect form, and that same quiet focus that made his chest tighten with something he didn't want to admit, respect mixed with irritation. During breaks, a few students gathered near her, asking where she learned to fight like that. She smiled softly and simply said, "Just practice." Her answers were short, polite, and always humble. No stories of victory, no claims of experience, just simplicity that made people admire her even more. The trainer, watching from across the room, clenched his jaw. He could feel his own students looking at her with the kind of curiosity and respect they used to have for him. It wasn't jealousy at first, it was confusion. He'd spent years building his reputation as the best in town, the one who trained fighters with discipline and power. But now, one quiet woman had walked in and shifted the balance of that reputation in just 2 days. Without saying a single boastful word, he started replaying their spar in his head. The timing of her counter, the calm in her eyes, the steadiness of her breath. How could someone with no visible experience read his moves so easily? That question kept him awake that night, long after the lights went out in the gym. Meanwhile, the other members began forming opinions. Some said she was naturally gifted. Others whispered she might have trained somewhere special, maybe even professionally. A few doubted the story completely, thinking it was all hype. But one thing was certain. She had become the quiet center of attention. The trainer tried to act indifferent, but deep down, he knew he wasn't done with her. His pride wouldn't let it end that way, and though she didn't realize it yet, the tension between them was only beginning, and everyone, in the gym could sense that something bigger was about to unfold. The tension in the gym had been growing like an invisible storm, and everyone could feel it. The trainer had tried to ignore the quiet respect the new woman had earned, but his pride refused to let it go. Every whisper about her skill sounded louder in his ears. Every admiring glance she received from his students felt like a challenge to his authority. Finally, one morning, he made a decision. If people wanted a show, he would give them one. Standing in the center of the mat, he clapped his hands sharply, drawing everyone's attention. "We'll be doing a short demonstration today," he announced, his tone confident but tight. His eyes locked onto hers. "You," he said firmly, pointing at her. "You'll join me." The room went silent. For a moment, she froze, unsure if she had heard him right. Around her, people exchanged nervous glances. Everyone knew this wasn't just a casual exercise. This was personal. The trainer smiled slightly, trying to make it sound like a teaching moment. "Let's show everyone how technique beats hesitation," he added, his words wrapped in politeness but edged with challenge. She hesitated, her heart pounding. She wasn't there to prove anything, and certainly not to embarrass anyone. But she also sensed that walking away would only make things worse, not for her, but for the quiet respect she had earned. So, after a long pause, she nodded. "All right," she said softly, her voice steady but calm. The students began whispering again, forming a loose circle around the mat. Some were excited, others nervous. The air was thick with anticipation. The trainer stretched his arms, trying to appear relaxed, but inside, his thoughts were racing. He wanted control. He wanted to show that no matter how talented she was, there was still a line between teacher and student. As they faced each other, her posture was different, calm, collected, almost graceful. She didn't carry the weight of pride or anger, only quiet focus. "Ready?" he asked, more as a statement than a question. She nodded once. The first few moves were light, basic testing of speed and reaction. He expected hesitation, but her movements were sharp, precise, controlled. She didn't fight with aggression. She moved with rhythm, letting instinct and training guide her. The watching crowd could feel something strange, a kind of balance forming between them. It wasn't a fight of power, but of understanding. Each movement she made seemed to reflect, not defiance, but discipline. The trainer's expression changed subtly as he realized this wasn't going the way he planned. She wasn't trying to defeat him. She was simply showing mastery through calm. Every strike he threw was countered with grace, every trick met with clarity. The crowd was mesmerized, their breaths held as they watched. In that quiet intensity, something shifted. The match, meant to be a public test, had become something deeper, a silent lesson about strength that didn't need to shout. And though the trainer didn't say it out loud, he could already feel that this demonstration might not end with him as the winner. The morning of the match arrived with an unusual stillness that hung in the air like heavy fog. The gym, usually filled with the rhythmic thud of punches and the sharp sound of trainers calling out orders, now buzzed with quiet anticipation. Word had spread far beyond the regular trainees. Everyone wanted to see what would happen between the confident coach and the woman who had quietly challenged his pride without ever saying a word. By the time the clock struck noon, the place was packed. Some leaned against the walls, others stood near the ring, whispering their predictions. "He's the trainer," someone murmured. "She doesn't stand a chance." But another voice quietly replied, "Did you see her last session? There's something different about her." On the mat, she sat alone, tying her gloves slowly and deliberately. Her fingers moved with calm precision, as if each knot was part of a ritual. Her eyes were closed, her breathing deep and steady. To anyone watching, she seemed almost detached from the chaos around her. But inside, her mind was focused, not on victory, but on control. She wasn't here to prove herself to anyone. She was here to honor the countless hours she had spent training in silence when no one believed in her. Every drop of sweat, every bruise, every night she pushed herself past exhaustion had led her to this moment. Across the room, the trainer laughed with his students, his confidence shining through every gesture. He cracked jokes, threw mock punches in the air, and smiled broadly, as if the outcome was already certain. The crowd's laughter fed his ego, but even in his smile, there was a hint of something else, a flicker of unease he didn't want to admit. Deep down, he remembered the precision of her movements, the way she never broke focus, the calm that never wavered. It wasn't normal for someone new to have that kind of control. As he stepped into the ring to warm up, the crowd cheered, his energy bouncing off the walls. But she remained still, hands resting on her knees, her gaze lowered. When she finally stood, the room seemed too quiet instinctively. Her presence wasn't loud or showy. It was grounded, like the stillness before a storm. She adjusted her gloves, exhaled slowly, and walked toward the mat. Every step carried the weight of her journey. Though no one knew the story, the years of being underestimated, the hardships that had forged her quiet strength, the patience she had learned when life tested her in silence. As she stepped into the ring, their eyes met. His grin was playful, almost mocking. Hers was calm, unreadable. In that moment, the crowd didn't see two opponents. They saw two forces colliding, pride against patience, noise against silence, confidence against discipline. The trainer rolled his shoulders and raised his gloves, smirking. "Ready?" he asked loudly. She simply nodded once. The air thickened, every whisper fading into stillness. The real test wasn't about skill anymore. It was about who would break first when silence met arrogance head-on. The bell rang, and the match began under the bright gym lights. But instead of rushing forward, like everyone expected, she stood still, calm, focused, and unreadable. The trainer bounced lightly on his feet, throwing a few testing jabs toward her, expecting her to flinch or react out of fear. But she didn't. Her eyes followed every movement, quiet and calculating, like she was studying him rather than fighting him. The crowd murmured in confusion. Was she scared? Was she frozen? The trainer smirked, thinking the same. He lunged forward with a quick combination, confident he could corner her easily. But to his surprise, she stepped aside effortlessly, her body moving with graceful precision. No panic, no hesitation, just quiet control. He tried again, faster this time, but she deflected his strikes with minimal effort. Each movement small, yet perfectly timed. It wasn't luck. It was rhythm. She wasn't reacting at random. She was observing him, watching how his shoulders tensed before a punch, how his stance shifted before a kick, how his breath quickened when he grew impatient. Every second, she was learning him. The crowd began to sense it too. The noise of whispers changed tone from amusement to curiosity. "She's reading him," someone whispered. "Look at how calm she is." The trainer, realizing he hadn't landed a single clean hit, grew more aggressive. His pride demanded control, and his attacks became faster, sloppier, louder. Each time he missed, her movements grew even quieter, like a dancer staying one step ahead of the beat. Sweat formed on his forehead as frustration set in. He threw a high kick. She ducked. A jab. She sidestepped. A sweep. She hopped lightly over it. Her breathing never changed. Her eyes never left his. It was as if she could see the fight happening before it even began. The crowd leaned forward, sensing something was building. He was the one who looked tense now. His breathing was uneven, his footwork breaking down, while she remained centered and still. The trainer growled, throwing a heavy punch straight at her shoulder. But this time she blocked it with perfect timing, her wrist turning smoothly to redirect his power. The impact echoed through the room, and for the first time, the trainer's expression shifted from confidence to disbelief. She had used his own strength against him. The silence in the gym was almost unreal. No one expected this. What started as a demonstration of dominance had become a lesson in patience and awareness. Every eye was now on her, every breath held as she circled him slowly, studying him once again. The trainer tried to regain his rhythm, but his confidence had cracked. He was fighting with emotion now, while she was still in control. She didn't need to prove anything. Her focus alone was enough to shift the balance. The crowd could feel it. This was no longer a match between equals. It was a test of understanding, and somehow, the quiet woman had already begun to win without throwing a single strike. The match had reached its midpoint, and the once lively gym had fallen into an uneasy quiet. The trainer's confidence, which filled the room at the start, was fading fast. His punches no longer carried the same speed, his kicks lacked their usual precision, and his breathing grew heavy. Across from him, the woman stood with the same calm expression she had from the very beginning, her breathing steady, her movements light and measured. Each time he lunged forward, she stepped aside with effortless grace, forcing him to chase her rhythm rather than control it. The spectators could feel the shift. It was no longer a contest of strength, but of composure. The trainer's frustration was clear now. Sweat poured down his face as he threw a desperate strike, but she slipped just out of reach, her eyes never leaving his. Her calmness began to unsettle him more than any punch could. He tried to regain his rhythm, bouncing on his feet, but the exhaustion was catching up, not just in his body, but in his pride. The woman moved closer, her stance solid, yet soft, like she was in complete harmony with the air around her. She didn't attack, not yet. She waited, letting him make the next move. When he did, it was sloppy, full of frustration. A powerful swing meant to prove a point. But this time, she saw everything, the shift in his shoulder, the tightening of his jaw, the imbalance in his footing. And in one perfectly timed moment, she countered. It wasn't violent or cruel. It was controlled, elegant, almost gentle. With a twist of her body, she redirected his force, sending him off balance and to the mat in one smooth motion. The sound of the fall echoed through the gym. Silence followed. No one clapped. No one spoke. They were too stunned by what they had just witnessed. She didn't raise her fists or celebrate. She simply stepped back, breathing calmly, her expression still soft, almost apologetic. The trainer blinked up at the ceiling, stunned not by pain, but by realization. It wasn't power that had defeated him, it was understanding. She had read him, respected him, and used his own rhythm against him without a hint of malice. Slowly, she offered him a hand, helping him up with quiet dignity. The crowd's silence turned into admiration. Even the trainer, now standing again, could only nod, a mixture of humility and respect in his eyes. What had started as a test of ego had become a lesson for everyone watching. The woman hadn't needed brute strength or arrogance to win. Her victory came from patience, balance, and quiet self-belief. In that single moment, the energy in the gym changed completely. What everyone had expected to be an easy show of dominance had turned into something deeper, a moment of realization that true strength often hides behind silence, and that calm confidence can humble even the proudest hearts. The gym was still silent, the echo of the last move hanging in the air, like a memory that refused to fade. The trainer took a step back, chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. His hands trembled slightly, not from pain, but from the rush of emotions flooding through him. For years, he had prided himself on being the best, the strongest, the sharpest, the one no one could match. Yet, in front of him stood a woman who had just shown him a kind of strength he had never understood. Her expression wasn't one of triumph. There was no smirk, no arrogance, no celebration. Her eyes, calm and gentle, held something else entirely. Compassion. It confused him at first. How could someone who had just outperformed him still look at him with kindness? That gaze stripped away every layer of pride he had built around himself. In that moment, He realized she had never entered the match to humiliate him. She had never tried to prove she was better. Every move she made was measured, respectful, almost like she had been guiding him toward something he needed to see for himself. The truth began to settle in. Strength, real strength, was not about overpowering others. It was about control, patience, and understanding. He remembered how she had waited, how she had read him, how she had shown restraint when she could have struck harder. Her calmness had felt like silence during the fight, but now he saw it for what it was, wisdom. Around them, the crowd still watched in awe, but their attention was no longer on the result of the match. It was on the quiet connection forming between teacher and student, though their roles had just reversed. The trainer took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside him. The heavy weight of ego that had once fueled his actions now felt foolish. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about being the best. He was thinking about being better. Slowly, he raised his head, meeting her eyes once more, and gave a small nod, one of respect, not defeat. She returned it with a slight smile, a gesture that said more than any words could. It was forgiveness, understanding, and acceptance, all at once. The trainer turned to the onlookers, realizing how much his pride had blinded him. And for a brief moment, he saw himself from their eyes, a man learning humility in the most unexpected way. What had started as a test of skill had become a lesson about humanity. He understood now that true power didn't come from muscles or medals. It came from character. And as the woman quietly untied her gloves and walked off the mat, leaving nothing behind but respect, the trainer knew one thing for certain: he hadn't lost a match that day. He had gained a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his life. When the crowd finally left the gym, the place grew quiet again. The lights above flickered softly, casting long shadows across the mat where the match had ended. The trainer stood still for a while, staring at the spot where she had last stood. He could still feel the echo of that final moment, the silence after her calm, decisive move, the realization that had shaken his pride more than any punch ever could. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about winning or proving himself. Something inside him had shifted. Slowly, he walked toward the changing area, his steps heavy but his heart strangely lighter. She was there, sitting quietly on a bench, unwrapping the tape around her hands. There was no trace of arrogance in her posture, no sign that she had just humbled the most respected trainer in the gym. She looked peaceful, almost like the match had never been about fighting at all. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to begin. Words didn't come easily to him, not when they involved admitting he was wrong. Finally, he took a deep breath and said softly, "I owe you an apology." She looked up, her expression calm and kind, waiting for him to continue. "I misjudged you," he said. "I treated you unfairly. I thought strength looked a certain way, and I was wrong." His voice wavered slightly, but there was honesty in it. She studied his face for a moment, then smiled gently, not the kind of smile that comes from victory, but one that comes from understanding. "You didn't lose," she said quietly. "You learned." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that sank deep into his heart. He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The truth in her voice hit him harder than any strike he'd taken in the ring. She wasn't trying to make him feel small. She was giving him something valuable: perspective. It wasn't about the fight anymore. It was about growth. The trainer felt a mix of relief and humility wash over him. All those years of chasing power, reputation, and recognition suddenly felt shallow compared to the wisdom of this one moment. Around them, the hum of the empty gym felt peaceful, almost sacred. It was just two people, one who had spent years teaching others how to fight, and another who had reminded him what it truly meant to be strong. As she gathered her things and walked toward the door, her words continued to echo in his mind. "You didn't lose. You learned." They were simple, but they carried a quiet truth, one that would follow him beyond the gym. into every class, every lesson, every challenge. He knew he would never forget this day, not because of what happened inside the ring, but because of what happened afterward, a moment of humility, forgiveness, and growth that changed him in ways no victory ever could. Weeks passed since the match that had left the entire gym in quiet awe. The echoes of that day still lingered, not in the form of gossip or rivalry, but as a quiet reminder of what respect truly meant. The trainer, once known for his strict tone and demanding nature, was no longer the same man. Something inside him had shifted deeply. He began his classes differently now, starting not with drills or stretches, but with a few words about patience and focus. He talked about how strength wasn't just about muscle or speed, but about control, kindness, and knowing when not to strike. His students noticed the change. He no longer barked commands. Instead, he guided them with calm, steady words. When someone made a mistake, he didn't scold, he explained, showing them how to learn rather than how to fear failure. The gym, once filled with tension and competition, slowly became a place of mutual respect. The woman still trained quietly in the corner, often surrounded by newcomers. She never acted like a hero, never spoke about the match that had changed everything, but her presence carried a calm authority, one that inspired others to try harder, not to prove something, but to grow. Sometimes, younger trainees would ask her what it felt like to face the trainer in that match. She would only smile softly and say, "It wasn't about winning. It was about understanding." Her words carried the same stillness that had defined her movements that day, gentle but powerful. The trainer often watched her from across the room, a faint smile touching his face. He still remembered her words, "You didn't lose. You learned." Those words had stayed with him, reshaping not just his methods, but his mindset. He began organizing open sessions, inviting people from all backgrounds to train together, emphasizing teamwork over rivalry. Slowly, the gym became known for something rare, a place where ego ended at the door. People came not just to fight, but to learn discipline, to build confidence, and to find peace in their strength. The story of that match spread quietly beyond the gym walls. Other trainers spoke of it with respect, calling it the day humility won. It became more than a story about two fighters. It became a lesson shared among students, a quiet tale about what real power looks like when mixed with compassion. And though the woman never sought recognition, everyone who trained there knew she had changed something far greater than one man's pride. She had changed the culture of the entire gym. Late one evening, as the last lights dimmed and the sounds of gloves and footsteps faded, the trainer stood in the empty room, feeling grateful. He realized that true strength wasn't measured in victories or belts. It was measured in how deeply one could respect others, and how humbly one could continue to learn. In that silence, he smiled, knowing that was her real legacy, respect that outlasted every fight.